Good morning.
Leona stood above us, the rabbit perched on one shoulder and Balkis on the other. She smiled wickedly. "Good morning," I blustered. I looked to my side. Neto was waking too, rubbing his eyes as if he couldn't believe it.
Come. The longer you stay here, the harder it is to leave, I found. If we start talking, we'll get delayed.
Leona knelt down, Bunny hopped onto my chest, Balkis came down too, came and smelled my nose, then went to smell Neto's hand, and finally to drink from the sacred pool.
I know what you're thinking. No, I didn't drink from it. Balkis has. We'll talk more once we're outside, so to speak.
The rabbit approached the pool. I saw Neto nervously get up and go to her. She looked back at him and scurried back to me, looking up affectionately at Leona.
It's over here, the best way out. At least I hope it is still.
On the other side of the waterfall there appeared to be a path, steep but manageable. We had to scale carefully, and looking down, the drop was vertiginous. I looked down protectively at Neto following us, but he seemed unbothered. I don't know why I remember him having a fear of heights. Perhaps I was feeling my own discomfort. Agatha did not have a fear of heights, definitely not.
Just a bit more!
Leona called from ahead. I could see Balkis's little head looking down at us from the cliff head above. The air hit differently as we arrived at the top. A sudden wall of humidity that brought on a creeping sense of dread, of anxiety, grief, washing over me. I looked at Neto, who seemed to be experiencing something similar. We took a moment sitting on the ground to recover from the climb, and whatever we were feeling, Leona knelt down with a compassionate lean.
Yes, I know. We'll speak on it, but the same is for me. Like loss. Don't worry. I can find our way back if we need to. It's not lost. It just feels that way every time you leave it. Even now, I have to trust that I'll find it, despite every feeling telling me that it's gone for good. At least that's what's happened before.
Leona guided us through the dense path. She wore some dark green fatigue pants and a cream cotton shirt, not unlike the ones we'd purchased in Lima, only hers were perfectly tailored. Across her waist were two long colored strips of fabric, one teal blue and one a shifting rainbow color like the scales of a fish. Not anything I'd seen her with before. She had intertwined the same fabric amidst her perfectly coiled braids as well. I noticed a hint of silver in her jet black hair that I didn't remember from before. Otherwise, she looked the same, piercing and proud. We wound our way downward for a half hour, never speaking, only occasionally waiting for Balkis or Bunny to inspect a plant or insect. The two were enjoying each other's company. Leveling off a slightly open plain where some deforestation had happened, we came upon an outpost of some kind, a canopied tent. There were a few cots, boxes, netting against the mosquitoes, and a chair with a tweed jacket on it. Leona? Who?
Ah, yes. Mr. Parker left his jacket. It was too warm and he put it there when we arrived. He must have left in a hurry. I doubt he'll be back for it. Perhaps it would fit you, Neto.
Who is Mr. Parker?
Funny. He gave me the impression you'd met.
If I recognize the herringbone, then perhaps we did at least met Simon.
Simon?
The young man.
Ah, yes.
Perhaps we should talk, but how long were we in there? If I'm not mistaken, the sun is going down.
Yes. That's the thing about that place. Time is flexible. I've been in and out and nothing passes, and other times I blink and it's night.
Agatha's apartment wasn't like that, I don't think.
Yes. Funny you should mention it. I've been thinking about, dreaming about that apartment. Anyway, no. Not that I could recall it having that quality, I mean. You get the impression that there's a connection, do you?
Bunny leapt on one of the cots and gave it a little testing bounce and then flopped down. Balkis watched her from the side, finally climbing up as well and relaxing in the evening heat. Neto unbuttoned his shirt. I felt like doing the same, but still felt uneasy around Leona, like a part of her was going to rip my throat out, a paranoia that wouldn't leave me. Neto built a small fire quite ably as Leona tasted and retasted her stew. The animals slept next to each other as I watched them lost in thought. The presence of the waterfall, the sacred place, still trailing in my subconscious like a dream I had, making me want to ask the others every so often if it were real, though I knew it had to have been. Howler monkey again, swell of jungle sounds. I opened my shirt to breathe a little more. Leona and I caught each other's glances. Neto seemed the most relaxed. The stew tasted plain at first, but then a little kick of cinnamon and cumin started to rise, red pepper flakes invigorating the nuttiness of the root vegetables. Neto finished first and collapsed on one of the cots a good distance away without even saying goodnight.
Well, I suppose I can understand. If I have one rudeness, it's needing to go to sleep at unexpected and inconvenient moments.
One rudeness, you say?
You're joking, but perhaps that's a good entry for us to talk.
Yes, well, where to begin?
Perhaps with the obvious, or maybe the most unstated. I think I'm ready for a confession at long last.
I took one last spoonful and lowered my bowl to the ground. Didn't know if I should fold my arms or grip my hands. The cot felt awkward to sit on. Thanks. Good stew.
Thank you. I took some spices from home. Parker brought some as well. He's very thoughtful that way. Great attention to detail like Agatha had.
And so the confession has to do with Parker?
No, although I'm happy to talk about him. What I have to confess has to do with long ago. It has to do with first impressions, when we met, when you and Balkis started to go off on your little misadventures. Innocent enough, I'm sure, and I know you knew each other before we became a twosome, but you might have thought that I gave you the cold shoulder on account of being a bad influence on him, which perhaps I gave that impression. But that wasn't it. Sure, I tried everything to persuade him away from your company, but he vouched for you, and I respected it. It wasn't when we started the collective either. Sure, it was complicated with Agatha, and the way we all tried to find a way to please her like a gaggle of orphans pleasing a mother hen. Trying so hard to take orders and yet to contribute in our own way. I didn't know you, well before, of course. Our paths crossed only when you accompanied Balkis home. And so, perhaps this new, sober self of yours made me more uncomfortable than I chose to express. I struggled with my own feelings to Agatha, to the collective. And your zealousness can be disconcerting. But again, I realized it was something else.
Leona perked her ear at another howler monkey. There was the moon again above the trees, full and bright.
I don't know why this is so hard to talk about. Why can't we speak of that which we see in each other's gazes? Our origins.
I said, knowing what she meant, suddenly, inexplicably nervous.
I recognized your origin the first time we crossed eyes. My originator, who perished as it was told to me long ago, introduced me to yours, however briefly when I was a youth.
I see. He was not my mentor. He rejected me. Story is rather complicated, but he left not long after, and was on a ship that...
As was mine. Drowned at sea, I was told. They were not exactly allies, but they knew each other well enough. I am relieved to hear he was not your mentor. That helps. But perhaps you can understand why I have been suspicious of you, of your essence all this time.
I see, yes, well, our essences are tied to our origin regardless of...
Who knows? It's more complicated. I had no good reason to not give you more of a chance. We were a gossiping bunch back then, weren't we? At least, some of us were. We didn't talk to you as much, or Neto. It didn't help any of us to rewrite our own personal narratives. Perhaps we should have been more flexible, more open.
You don't need to explain. I was childish, delayed development. I wasn't open to talk much, not about much anyway, but Agatha did change me. And I changed myself even more after she left us, which I know was difficult for us all. Perhaps I was not sensitive to that too. You.
No, you were not. I loved her too, you know. As did Balkus.
But you've found a way to let go?
Of my anger? Yes, I think so. Perhaps it was seeing you from above in my crow form, struggling in near death, that released me of it. I saw clearly in that moment. I have never felt such intense hate and distrust for someone as him, your origin. And I transferred it onto you. It wasn't fair. My dreams, they've also helped. Helped me see more clearly. Or feel, rather. Remember where I came from. And how far I've come.
I envy that. You and Netto seem to share something then. My dreams are only dreams.
Do we? Well.
The jungle seemed to shift gears like a pitched octave as we both looked out into the open field. A single star shone over the high horizon. And so, start fresh? I have nothing to say against what you've told me and everything to reflect upon, and I'm grateful, Leona, that you helped, that you came. She looked over at the bunny.
Well, it was a team effort.
So, this Parker, I suppose that's the only thing I'd rather not be in the dark about.
Yes. Mr. Parker has known Balkus for quite some time. He met him through Gree, though, as you may know, Gree hasn't been easy to locate of late. He vouched for him and built trust over the years. In any case, he agreed to help Balkus in locating, the missing piece, the healing magic. He's not one of us, of course, but he's been nothing but discreet as far as we can tell. He's also very wealthy, connected. I suppose it was dishonest that we didn't let you in on it. But Gree persuaded Balkus it would be for the best. I hope you'll forgive him that.
And his motivation?
A tentative alliance. An effort to find and unite those of us that are left. He wants to act as an intermediary. He makes good points. Moves thoughtfully and slowly. Almost like he instinctively understands the way we move about the world. It's unfortunate you didn't speak.
He sure wasn't very transparent, rather cagey and suspicious if I'm honest. I can't say I'm convinced of your appraisal, no offense.
I see. None taken. I understand that as well. But we took the risk and he found this place for us. All the while being unable to enter for himself. And I think he would have liked nothing more. You may not be able to tell, but I dare say Balkus is healed. The only unanswered question is if he'll ever resume his human form. But I have faith. As far as trusting Parker, well, he's hardly a young man, and we know how to watch our backs.
I looked over at Balkus's sleeping form. His ear twitched and Bunny's did in response. Healed. At what cost?
I don't know what to tell you, Harry. He's not in pain. That's all we could hope for. It had gotten a lot worse since you last saw him. It was progressing rapidly. There is no greater pain than seeing someone... Well, anyway, here we are. I'm sure you have lots to share as well. But perhaps it can wait until tomorrow. I'm feeling a little ready to sleep, if that's all right. Being near the fountain takes it out of me.
With the group sleeping, Bunny and Balkus on their own cot, I paced out in the shore-end field under the pale, maternal watch of the moon. My eyes adjusted and I paced until I found the unmistakable tracks of where the helicopter had landed not too long ago. My ears perked as I thought I heard helicopter blades, but it was just a trick of the imagination, the wind whipping through the forest in circuitous fashion. I couldn't sleep, and so I just sat on my cot watching the embers slowly fade as the light of dawn crept up to the light of the moon, indescribably beautiful, the orchestra of the jungle tuning itself for the day. I looked toward where we had been, there where the sacred fountain lay, and felt Agatha's presence somewhere again, as if she was behind me, and then she lay a hand on my shoulder, and I finally let myself release.